Watch the shadows of the clouds on the surface of the ocean out the window of a plane. I get nervous when I fly. I'm used to walking with my feet.
Got involved with the Quality of Life project from that point on, and it's always been something that's I found pretty inspirational. I'm definitely someone who is probably much more comfortable being in the audience for something like this than being on stage talking about it. Certainly, my quality of life has been a journey, and so I'm very happy to be here. For my work, I work at a company called 72 and Sunny. We're advertising and marketing firm, and quality of life is a really relevant subject in that business because when you own an ad agency, all you really own are a couple computers and some conference room tables. Everything else that's going on there is all about people, and those people's quality of life, in a lot of ways, is my business. There's nothing that we make that isn't made by our culture that happens with collaboration. No one works alone. So I think this theme is really important to me just as a person who's looking to find fulfillment in life like most humans are. But it's also as a business aspect to it that understanding the dynamics of quality of life are really relevant and applicable to my business life. In my personal life, I'm married. I've got 2 little kids, and I love surfing. Yeah, all right. I'm from Central Pennsylvania, so I claim to be one of the better surfers to come out of that region.
Jeff Rose, native Angelino, which not many people can say. Should have grown up in Central Pennsylvania because I lived my whole life here and never surfed until I was 40. I think quality of life for me, Matt and I are in similar businesses, and the joke when you own an agency is at the end of the night, your assets kind of walk out the door. And it's always been for me a challenge on how to have a great quality of life, not only for myself, but for everyone who works for us and with us. And I think we've gone through such an interesting time, kind of a moment in time in life that hopefully we'll never see again. But when I look back on my grandparents, people like that, they lived through this, and it was always something they talked about, you know, even into their years as they passed away. So I think, you know, having quality of life right now is a really interesting point in time, because when you look back, money, equity, all those things, it comes and goes really quickly. But the thing that really is lasting, or the thing that kind of pulled myself through the last couple of years, was indeed quality of life. So I met Kit through his parents, and through kind of the coincidence on a plane saying hello and talking as he was walking down the aisle with his kids, and I was watching this guy travel with kids, which I do a lot, and that kind of began a friendship. So nice to meet you.
Newman. I'm also a native Los Angelino. I met Kit several years ago at a political, it was like some sort of political fundraiser or something? Something like that. From what I recall, like a greenhouse in Santa Monica, just like in Garden. And we started talking, and we just kept getting more and more engaged. And since then, we've gotten together a number of times, and there's always been really good new stuff. And he asked me to come here this evening, and this is really such an incredible and great subject, and it's so important to all of us, but we never really talk about it directly. It's always kind of indirectly. And so I'm excited to be here. I make a living as a money manager. I manage money for people. And the subject has always been very, very near and dear to me, because it's always been my driving force. You know, how to be successful and how to be really happy. And I've consciously, you know, changed course in my life several times in order to you know, achieve that. I'm married. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are big kids. They're 20 and 18 in college. And I have a 13-year-old. I'm married to the same woman for 25 years, and it was probably pretty good for a wedding. Pretty good. And I'm looking forward to
it's a question that doesn't resonate with you and you want to, skip, don't feel like you have to answer every question, but I think probably most of them are up your guys' alley and you can kind of share something with us. The first question, and we'll start with Bob this time, but what are some things that need to be happening in your life for you to be feeling great and contented, I guess?
I'm a self-described overachiever, so pretty much everything has to be in full cylinder. Everything has to be good for it to be good for me. My business has to be going real well. My relationship with my wife and kids has to be right where it's supposed to be. Everything out and up front. And I would say what I have found in the last few years that's most important for me, I have to really be having an effect on other people. I have to be changing people's lives. So I made a very conscious effort to be very charitable. And so I grew up here in LA thinking that, if I offend anybody, I apologize. But I felt like Mormons tithe. They're so stupid. They give 10% of everything they make. And then somewhere down the line, some years ago, I learned that that's actually older wisdom than Mormonism. And it goes all the way back to the first 5 books of the Bible. And as an experiment, I was dared to experiment about it. And I started giving away some of the money I made, and I basically never given anything away. And I had an amazing experience. The more I gave, the more they came back to me. And so I probably find that the single most important thing for me is to be able to be charitable, because I just get tremendous energy back from it. So that's probably the most important thing for me.
Question again? It's such a good answer.
Have you ever been in a Turkish prison? What are some things that need to be happening in your life for you to feel great?
I think it is. I think a relationship-driven life is, for me, the highest quality. I think when you disconnect with people around you and you just kind of become an island unto yourself, it's really hard for me to be fulfilled. So I spend a lot of time staying connected to the people in my life. So I talk to the same friend that I've had for 33 years every week, twice a week, knowing that I may be the one instigating and I may be the one having to reach out, but having that connection, having that bridge in my life, really grounds me. And he's a minister in this little town in Connecticut. Our lives couldn't be any more different, but I think the shared experiences that we've had over the last 3 decades, they trump anything. So, I think it's human connection is really important. I think, giving, it's not to echo, but that's kind of how we met. It's, being part of the community and building community and giving back to your community. It's the most fulfilling thing. And, not necessarily to have your name on a building or, on an invitation to an event, but it's really about knowing that what you're doing is helping move someone forward somewhere.
Very cool. I'd say for me, one thing I've learned about myself is I do better when I'm in motion than still, and so I think the consistent thing for me that it needs to be happening is I need to be learning. I grew up in a family of educators where there's a huge premium placed on book learning, which I adopted. That's kind of a passion I like being a student, and that was something that agreed with me. And then as I got into the work world and developed more complex relationships and life moved faster, and I always found that having a learning practice was something that I enjoyed, I developed, and there's so many things I think in any business context that you can't control. There are always external factors, but that's just something that you can, at least I always feel like I can lean on. So I'm at my best when I'm learning, and if I'm not feeling my best, and I try to kind of adopt a learner's lens on things, and then things seem to move more for me. I'm able to connect better with people and be a little more present.
Oh, great. I think for me, I am a dedicated student of balance. And I really think that for me it's critical. I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I've talked a lot about it. I've read a lot about it. And it incorporates a lot of things that you guys have said. Really, it's, you know, I don't know about you guys, but as time moves on, it feels like it's going faster and faster. I thought a lot about why that is, and if I could slow it down somehow, and I think you really can't. It's just as less is left over, it feels like it's moving faster. So I spent a lot of time thinking, all right, how do I take the time I have and allocate it and use it in the things that are most important to me? And part of it is definitely giving back, you know, whether it's time, you know, financial, whatever. It is an amazing feeling. I didn't do it when I was growing up. I always thought I'll wait till I have enough and then I'll start giving. And then I realized that there really is never enough or too much, but you always have enough to give. There's always someone that's less fortunate that needs your help or time. And it can be a lot of different forms. So that's an important part of my balance. Another is just passions. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of people sell their companies, really accomplished, very wealthy, amazingly successful, highly intelligent, motivated people. And they sell their company. They have a fortune that couldn't be spent in generations, and they're miserable. And the reason they're miserable is because they don't have anything else to do with their time. They define themselves through their business and through their daily interactions and, I guess, reinforcement that they got. And it just reinforced to me the power of passions. And it doesn't matter what they are, whether it's reading or even philanthropy, you know, but something that is yours, that you do it, that, you know, mine particularly give me both physical and mental. I love kiteboarding, so when the wind's blowing, I'm happier. Times like this are harder for me. I mean, I got to do something. So I'm on the water, I'm getting exercise. It's a little couple-hour vacation for me. So that's an important part of my balance. My kids' happiness, my spouse or fiance's happiness, that's an important part of my balance. The happiness of the people that I work with and around, that's part of my balance. So, you know, it's hard to, like, I'm glad I was last. Thank you very much for alternating, because, you know, when you get the benefit of hearing the other guys, if I was first, I probably wouldn't have had an answer that I felt as good about. But I really feel good about that. This, you know, pursuit of quality of life is about your personal balance. It's about my personal balance and figuring out what that is. Every year I've started a process where I do a personal plan. And I divide my life into 4 buckets. I divide it into fulfillment, passions, health, and relationships. And I literally pencil out what I want to do that year in those categories. What friends I want to focus on. Because we were talking about social networking before we came in here. And I know it's a very prevalent part of our lives. I've ducked it so far because I don't feel like I have enough time already to spend with the people that are in my life. So it's time, how you spend it, how you divide it among the things that are important to you.
Well, just a follow-on question to that, which is personal organization. So you're mentioning all these different things that need to be in balance in your perspective. So do you have any personal organization techniques, anything around that ultimately leads to your quality life?
Yeah, I'll make that one really short. I do that annual plan, and I do it, and then I share it with some very good friends that give me feedback, and then I review it periodically throughout the year to see how I'm doing. You know, it's not, I'm not the kind of guy that's, if I don't do this, then I've failed. It's, if I don't do this, then things have changed, and I chose midstream to reallocate that time and energy. But so I do that, and then I am organization's important to me. You know, just I can't work in a cluttered environment. I can't have a cluttered desk. My personal organization tool, which I've been using for I don't know, as long as I can really remember, is I have a piece of paper that's still a piece of paper, and on it is all the calls I have to make, the things that I want to do and by when, and the errands I have to run. And so as the week progresses, you know, it'll have the additional calls I have to make, and I do that, I update that weekly, and that's sort of the center of my my universe. That's my tool.
Anything on like the organizational side, planning, that you guys want to share about?
I'm a disaster.
Should we see it?
I'm doing that immediately. I need you to look at my site. Yeah, I want to see that.
You can make an excuse though, you know, on a piece of paper.
I hired an assistant who I hired because she told me she had the GTD plan. And I didn't really ask what the GTD plan was, but she said, it's amazing, it's going to help organize your life, it's great. And yesterday we were sitting in the office, I looked at her, and I realized it's been 6 months, and I've never seen the GTD plan. And she explained to me that the only way the GTD plan works is it's not her plan, it's my plan. And so I realized that I've gone all this time really hoping for, you know, kind of the silver bullet, someone to walk in, make it all good, and tell me like how to do X, Y, and Z, because you know, I'm a personal disaster as well. And ultimately, I'm going to have to force her every day to figure out how to teach it to me, because it's been 6 months that I have no GTD plan, which is getting things done, which you know does not happen.
You want?
Yeah,
Nothing wrong?
no, it's good.
So kind of the bigger picture thing, we'll start with Bob on this one, but what are, in your opinion, if you're talking to, you know, your son or nephew or what have you, conversation is for a conversation about you, what are some important perspectives, you know, to carry throughout life? You know, what are some things that jump to mind as it relates to what we're talking about tonight?
Well, it kind of relates to the last question. I would say that, and actually, my son and I have active conversations about these things continually. He's a very deep 20-year-old. I tell him he has to have a system. You do have to have a system. And the system can be subject to evolve, but you have to have a system. So we're always comparing notes about our respective systems. One of the most important things that we talk about is that every morning you have to kind of get clear. So you have to meditate. You have to have some sort of a ritual that puts you in touch with your highest best self. So both my son and I, we meditate and pray every single morning. And he agrees with me that it makes him far less ADD and far better at focusing. We also have agreed that you need to have some sort of a PDA where you put everything down. So everything is down so that our minds aren't cluttered with, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. You're always jumping around like a monkey mind, being reactive. So everything's in the electronic PDA. And then at my desk, I have a yellow legal pad because the stuff comes in really fast. Everything goes down on the yellow legal pad. And then we just check things off. I check things off as I go. And I tell him that you have to be very organized. You need to do something really hardcore physical every day. Every day. So we ride road bikes, or we do yoga, or snowboard, or whatever it is. Every day, 7 days a week, hardcore physical, to just get that whatever out of you so that you can be relaxed. And then you have to eat healthy. And you have to do things for other people. So, you know, all of those things, and actually make it work.
And what's sort of the motivating him to sort of, you know, work with you on this? Is it just the relationship you've built over the years, or how you sort of, you know, how you've learned to motivate him?
Well, it's really simple. And I'll just, when he was in high school, he was stoned 24/7, and he got nothing done. He was a complete screw up.
You guys here in the back, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
And
He said stoned.
What high school?
No.
He was complete underachiever, and I devised a plan to shake him up, and it worked. And when he came back, he goes, "Well, how do I get better?" He really did. He came back 180 degrees person from this thing I turned into. And I said, "Let's talk about it." And we just had this open dialogue, and we're each other's arguably best friends. and he just wants to be the best he can be because he realizes it's more fun to be the best that he can be than otherwise.
Sorry to sidetrack on that, on Bob here, but the thing you motivated was that when you got him to do the IDF in Israel?
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. Can you share that?
Yeah, I'll be real brief. I sent him to Israel. The Israeli army has a boot camp program for Jewish kids from outside of Israel. It's like those boot camps in Utah where you send kids who are real messed up. But this has an agenda, both from the Israeli standpoint and from our standpoint. And basically for 2 months, they shave your head, they give you an Uzi, they put you in a barracks, and they yell at you. And he stood there at attention in the Negev desert, and they yelled at him. They literally broke him. And he cried, and he called home, and he wanted to come back. And the friend that he went with, they were both from Beverly Hills High School, that mother let him come back. That kid is still screwed up. We said, you can't come back. And when he was done with that, I had it, actually the Israeli army wanted him to enlist, and I was all for it, and my wife said no, so she won. But I had a backup plan. From there, I sent him to a small sub-Saharan jungle country in Africa, and he worked at an AIDS HIV orphanage where kids who lost both their parents, I made him work there for 3 months, and they had no hot water, barely any electricity, they only ate one kind of food, and he taught English to kids. There were 600 kids at this orphanage, and he emailed us, and basically he was just blown away. His whole idea of life that he had evolved at Beverly Hills High School was shattered. For lack of a better adjective, it was like the most hardcore psychedelic acid trip, mind-blowing experience. He came back. We actually went over there and met him and volunteered at the orphanage ourselves. And when he came back to the United States, he kissed the ground here. He became the guy amongst all his friends lecturing, you guys are stoned all the time, you're wasting your time, you have no idea what's going on in the world, and you've got to change. And he goes around and he basically preaches that to his friends. We still wouldn't let him live at home for about 7 months, and he knew we were real serious, and now he appreciates his home, he appreciates what he gets from his family, and he's just a wanting change.
So that question is
I got it.
Respect.
Yeah. I think it's integrity and really teaching the lesson of keeping your word. Because in the end, that's all you really have. And if you can live that yourself and teach that to your kids, and if they carry it with them, it comes in handy in a lot of situations. So it comes in handy in their personal life, it comes in handy in their business and their relationships. And I think that's a lesson that one learns over time, and one learns really only through experience and role modeling and learning it from life, and people are going to teach it to you. So I think that would be the key lesson.
And any interesting experience in businesses around that, where obviously that's just how you act and interact, but where it actually served you in a business context of just having that kind of clarity?
Yeah, I wouldn't be in business for myself today if someone had done the opposite. So I worked at a big agency, and go unnamed, and it was sold to another big company, go unnamed, and the guys that sold the agency looked at the 10 senior people and they said, this is what we're going to do when we sell the company, and this is what you're going to get, and here's the piece of paper, and we're just going to fill in a number, and everyone's going to get that, and it's going to be great for all of you. And then the world changed. It was 1999, and the internet bubble burst, and we all went into a meeting one day, and they looked at us and said, we can't do what we said we were going to do. And everyone just kind of stopped and looked at it, and didn't walk out the door that day, but realized that their word didn't mean anything, but it wasn't their fault. So I stayed, lived it out a year, and then one day something else happened, and again they went against their word, and kind of 1 strike, 2 strikes, you learn, 3rd strike you're a dummy. And the day that they changed their word that second time was the day I left, and 10 days later started our agency. So I think learning that lesson was valuable. Learning it when I was 37 was a late point in time to really learn it. So I think if you can learn it at a real young age and really demonstrate that to your kids, to people you work with, your friends and your family, it's life-changing.
Yeah, so in terms of advice for my son, you know, I'm a big fan of John Wooden. He's one of my personal heroes, and he's got, he actually has a lot of good ideas. He's not the best, most quotable guy. He needed a copywriter. But the idea, you know, one of his key ideas is that things tend to work out best for the people who make the best of the way things turn out. And I think that that's just a lesson that I've adopted at a pretty early age. It was ingrained in me and my family, and has served me pretty well. And it's just a good ethic, I think, for dealing with a life that full of unknowns and outside influences and things that you can't do much about. And I think a corollary to that, which is something I've learned more recently, which I've kind of learned from business, but it's one of those things that I think a lot of times when you bring to business, you bring your personal life to business and your life lessons and your ethics, and occasionally I think business can be a great teacher. And that's just kind of eliminating the idea of mistakes from your mindset. When, you know, I think, I don't know what your guys' experience is, but for me, one of the challenges of running a company is always wondering if you're making the right decision and whether you're making mistakes or not, because sometimes you're kind of in an alone type of situation, you got to make a decision fast, and you just kind of go with it. And I think what I've learned is that when you start thinking about, am I making a mistake or not, you're kind of asking the wrong question. All you can do is make decisions and learn from them, and if it didn't work, then do something different, and just kind of build upon that, because you really, one thing that's been really validating for me is you just don't know what's good luck and what's bad luck. You just, sometimes things have happened to me that just seem like, oh, that's the worst possible thing that could have happened, and I look back on it and see the kind of chain reaction that was part of it. I'm very happy that really unlucky thing happened to me, or what have you. And so I don't know. That lens on the world, I think, is useful for, you know, if I could have, my son's much different life stage. He's 4.5, so no Army experience yet, hopefully. But I don't know. My hope for him is that he can look at the world like that, because I think it's a happier kind of rewarding, fulfilling way to do it. So,
I was a great dad until my son turned 12, and we're learning a lot about each other right now. It's actually really interesting and cool, and you know, I always felt the best way to teach is by example, and so I try and live the life that I talked about with him. I think spending a lot of time outdoors is really important to me. It's part of my balance, and it's become part of my son's, and so that's important to him. You know, all the things you guys said, I really don't have a lot to add. Those are great points.
What's kind of shifting a little bit, but what's something that you've gotten better at over the years? Maybe you weren't so great at it, and you kind of, as you matured, got a little bit.
You know, it's so funny. I always considered one of my best skills to be listening. And I learned this really valuable, amazingly impactful lesson when I took a year off from school and worked for this guy. And I won't bore you with this story, but it was a miserable experience for 3 months until I just had an epiphany one day, and that what he was asking to do and what I was working 18 hours to do were different things. And from that point forward, I realized how valuable listening was, right? So I've always considered myself a very good listener. I think it's really critical in what I do in my business. And you know, I really try and listen to what's important to sellers and structure deals that meet their personal needs. And so it's really been, I felt like one of my main separating skills, and really my advantage, my edge. And what I've learned in the past 2 days with my son and through my son is that I still have a lot of improvement to make. And that the kind of listening I do, which is an important kind of listening, is great, but then there's active listening, the kind of listening you have to do with a teenager And it's a different discipline. And so I'd say, I don't know that it's something I've gotten better at, but it's now something on my radar. So I expect and I believe I will get a lot better at that over the next several years.
What about you, Matt? So something you've gotten better at over the years?
You know, I think getting energy from other people and kind of letting that happen. You know, I spend a lot. I'm a pretty high energy person, and I put a lot of energy out there, and I really like to help people and motivate them and move them, and I get a huge amount of satisfaction from that. And I think what I've learned over the last probably 5 years is that's actually, you know, even though like you can think like, oh, that's kind of a good thing, it's really one way, so it's inherently not that productive, you know, and that getting energy from other people, letting them give you energy, and kind of is something that works for everybody. So it's something I've kind of allowed myself to do.
And what would, if someone was not letting that happen, what is it that they're kind of doing to prevent that?
Why wasn't I?
Yeah, or like if someone's not letting that happen, is it your?
You know, I think it comes from a place of ego, ultimately, and it takes like certain humility, I think, to just realize people have more to give to you than you have to give to them, and I don't know. For me, it's something I just kind of intellectualized, and then kind of started to see its merit. I think you can arrive at that place in different ways, but I got it from, you know, reading books and going to things like this, and kind of figuring out just the idea of motion in terms of how energy works with people. That is, you know, anything that goes one way is inherently, I think, limited by its source.
I think when you're an entrepreneur at any point, I think you have to have this belief in yourself that is almost unrealistic, that you can do everything. And you can have good people around you to do things, but you kind of have to have this drive that if you're not going to do it, it's not going to happen. And I've seen, I think over the last 5-6 years in dealing with entrepreneurs who started their company and grown their company, even to global companies, you sit and you talk to them, and they're really the same entrepreneur that they were when they started the business. It's just they've got more toys around them. When I say toys, meaning people, responsibility, problems, issues, but they still manage the same way as if it was 3 guys in the back of a coffee shop. And I think the one thing that I'm learning is how to really focus on what I'm good at and try to find people who can be good at those other things to really make a business grow and run, so I can have some kind of quality of life, because in the business we're in, it's kind of a 24/7 business. And I think it takes a lot of humility. I'm not quite there yet, but I think I'm kind of on the path, to kind of be able to look at someone and say, you know what, I'm not good at everything, and I need someone like you to come in and do the things that I'm not good at. And you can't really say that a lot of times when you're starting a business, because you're just kind of going. And you have this fire in you and this drive in you, and you're going. But then you get to a certain point in the road, and you kind of look back, and the wind's kind of behind you, like, okay, now where did I get to, and how do I keep going? And that's a lesson I'm just kind of realizing now, but it's helping.
I would say, real simply, the one thing I've gotten better at is my priorities, how I manage my time. I don't waste time anymore. I really don't think I waste very much time, and I focus on what's important to me. As I've gotten older, my life's gotten increasingly more complex, and I've learned to manage time.
You know, one thing through all the interviews that we've done, a theme or commonality that has emerged is people being effective at relationships, and maybe part of that is minimizing the stress that disrepaired relationships lead to, or what have you. There's a lot of elements to it, but I've seen there's sort of people have certain skills and how they deal with people, how they interact with others. One example might be the benefit of the doubt principle, or assuming positive intent from people, and how that can improve the quality of relationships. But since relationships, family, friends, whatever, are such a key part of it, maybe you guys can share if you have any things that you've learned in your life, or things that work for you in terms of on the relationship front, basically.
This might be a novel approach to that question. Two things. One, I've come to realize that I'm not going to be friends with everybody. There's going to be certain people in my life that I really want to spend time with, and other people that just want. If you're going to be friends with everybody, you can get along with everybody, but it's virtually impossible. You have only so much time. That's one thing I've just given up being a people pleaser. But secondly, some time ago I came across a saying that said that really resonated with me, and it was basically that it's worse to take offense than to give offense. And I basically live by that mantra, and that is, so no matter what anybody says to me, I am never offended. And I really live by that, and another mantra is, it's all good. It's like you said, it's all for the good. So I don't want to know people. I don't want to have people in my life that are going to be offended by what I say, because it's going to put kind of like a big block or a big editorial on, geez, can I say this to this person? I have to worry about offending that person. So I never take offense at anything that anyone says to me, and I'll process it, I'll discuss it, and then on the same token, I want to make sure that the people that are in my life aren't going to be offended by what I say.
I think mantras are important. I think little things that kind of come into your life and they stick with you. When I was in college a while ago, I remember my college roommate saying, my dad has this saying, you get what you settle for and you deserve what you get. And it kind of stuck with me, and still to this day, I kind of use it. It kind of drives me, which is, if you're just going to accept a certain situation, come to Matt's point, and not really learn from, not really grow from it, then that's what you're stuck with. You're stuck in the situation. There's so many ways to change one's life, and there's so many opportunities that if something's not working, change it. Figure out how to take a different path, a different road, a different person. If someone's jamming you up and holding you back, it's like, if that's what you're going to settle for, that's what you deserve. So, I think those simple things, and they are kind of like those John Woodenisms, that you kind of just keep with you and that drive you forward in life. Whether it's meditation or prayers or silly slogans, you find meaning in them, and you let that meaning kind of fuel who you are and what you do. So that's mine, or one of them, please.
Just kind of interjecting, but tying in mantras and what Bob was saying, that Dr. Seuss line, which is a great one, which is I'll butcher it, but it's say what you want, do what you want to do, because those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter. I just love that.
Yeah, for me, personal relationships, it's kind of in line with what Bob was talking about. I think I think intent is something that's really, really powerful. Actually, I feel like I have to say something here for a second. My company we hired a life coach for our company, and we only have like 140 or so people, so we're a pretty small company to have a life coach. She has a different title, but she's actually here, and I feel like at least 80% of what I'm saying I'm just parodying her, so I didn't even tell her about this. I started coming with, she's right there. Yeah, exactly. Raise your hand, Cindy. There you go. But this is a very valuable lesson that Cindy taught me.
Did she do well, Cindy?
It doesn't matter what she thinks. He's doing. you know, like intent. I really do think it's all about intent, and that is you know, if in your personal relationships, if your intentions are pure, then I think overall, if you're in the relationships with the right people, then you'll have good outcomes. And I also personally, I'm a pleaser. I want people to like me, and I can take a lot of comfort in my intent. That if I say or do something that disturbs people, angers people, and you know, at a company our size, that's just going to happen on a daily basis almost. And unfortunately, can't control it, and that's just the way it is. But if I'm comfortable with my intentions, I can live with the outcome or whatever happens. So that's been really productive for me. It's also taking the edge off of some relationships that, you know, sometimes when you feel like you're not pleasing someone, you get angry at them for it, and it's helped make me less angry about things and just kind of let it be a little more.
So how about in like in the context of family relationships? Mm-hmm. And so when you're having I guess direct conversations about your feelings and things like that, and that intent principle, you know, does that give you kind of more courage to have those conversations that, you know, are hard to enter sometimes?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean, I'm really blessed. I'm married to someone who likes to have like the bravest, scariest conversations. Like that's why I married her, because I'm like, wow, I can't believe you want to talk about this. And I found that exciting, and that's ultimately how we connected. So, but yeah, I think the same. It's all people. I mean, you care about some more than others. You're more intensely involved, but I think it's a basic principle that works. Yeah.
It's fun listening to you guys. It's cool. I'm always figuring out how you balance between acceptance and judgment, right? So I've tried to eliminate judgment from my relationships, from my communications, from my daily activities, from when I walk into a room. And I found that it just had incredible positive impact on so many things. When I eliminate judgment from business scenarios, it actually brings in a lot of other ideas and opportunities, right?
You have to.
Right. When I eliminate judgment from walking into a room, also with it goes fear and insecurity and that kind of stuff. So I guess the way I approach it isn't by eliminating judgment, it's by acceptance. So when I approach relationships, I just try and accept it. And when I approach business scenarios, I try and accept them. But it doesn't mean that I'm satisfied with, you know, it's funny because it's like, if you take acceptance, is that contrary to your mantra, you know? But I don't think so. I think that the desire to achieve and acceptance aren't in conflict with one another. I think, for me anyway, I find that I have to accept whatever it is. Now, in deal making, I have a saying that their perception is my reality. So I have to accept their perception. And it may be completely different than what I believe is accurate or true, but if I don't accept their perception, I can never really understand what they're trying to tell me. And the same in any relationship. So I believe that you go through that very fine keyhole of acceptance, and then the whole world of opportunities open up to me. And that from there, you can really, I think, feel what the path is to achieve what you want to achieve. So.
And does that also just free your mind up? If you're walking down the street, your kind of mind is more freed up because you're not, you know, kind of judging.
Yes. I mean, I need a good analogy. I mean, I've got 1,000 analogies for this, but when you travel somewhere, okay, we live in an amazing place, right? But when you're walking down the street, you're generally not going, oh my gosh, look at that beautiful building. Oh my gosh, look at that beautiful sky. Oh my gosh, look at the cool sparkle of the sidewalks. You're really kind of, you know, there's the Starbucks I walk by, and you're kind of created this critical thinking about this environment that you're in. If you're in Tuscany, or let's take another city, New York, you're probably walking the street and you're open and you're looking and you're observing and you're letting data come in and seeing things. Well, if you take that travel mentality to where we live, you'll find that some stuff you walk by every day you didn't ever see, but it's really brilliant. And so, yeah, I mean, that idea of acceptance, I mean, I believe it's the keyhole to everything. I don't know if I answered your question.
That's great, yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
It's all good. So I guess getting down to micro, so you guys have all shared some little things that you do, routines and such, but maybe there's some other little nuggets that we can unearth there. But so start with you, Dan. I mean, what are, you already mentioned some things like organization and your annual ritual, but any things you do on a daily, weekly, kind of monthly basis on any of these fronts that in some way adds to your quality of life?
Yes, other than the stuff I've talked about, and I'm powered by the tools that I've talked about, I don't feel bad about pursuing the stuff that I know is giving me balance. I mean, I sometimes, like when I'm walking out of the office at 4 because the wind's blowing, and there's a lot of heavy stuff going on, and my teams, they're cranking away. You know, I get a little tinge of, wow, you know, I maybe should be there working, but I also feel really proud and feel very successful in a way that I have a team that enables me to go and pursue a passion of mine. And from a work standpoint, the work gets a payback, even though those are hours where I'm leaving during the middle of the afternoon. When I'm on the water, I get my best ideas sometimes. I get my best things. So I guess I've forced myself, and I had a mentor that I really got this from, this guy's an amazing man, and in his 30s, he started taking a week off a month from work. And he said to work, do not call me unless it's an emergency. This is my time. I'm going to use part of it to give back, you know, and part of it for myself. And then in his 40s, it was 2 weeks. And then in his 50s, it was 3 weeks. And you know, he's really pissed if it goes below. I knew if there was a period when things went a little sideways in business, and he gave me his 3 weeks, and he was not a happy camper. But the point being is, and I remember talking one time, he goes, you know, I create that time. I create that time. And I took that from that. It's like, wow, okay, I get it. And so I create that time, whether it's that 2 hours in the afternoon to go kiteboarding, or, you know, the 2 hours to build a turtle pond with my son, or whatever it is. So I think that's the only thing I'd add.
What was the question? I was just thinking like
the question is
soft.
just,
Sorry.
any things you do kind of on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis that add to it? It could be, you know, health related, diet related, productivity.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I try to stay really physical. You know, whether it's, you know, everything, riding my bike to work, going surfing. I had back surgery last year, which was a real kind of game changer for me. Very kind of humbling experience, but it's kind of made me like, no, working out isn't really optional for me anymore. It's like I can have another back surgery, or I can exercise. So that's actually been a really positive thing. So that's important to me, and kind of like you, it's like if I can be physical even for an hour, it's just amazing how much better I am, and everything works better in my life, and people around me I think are probably happier, and that works well, and I also like I'm a morning person, so I just really get up pretty naturally, super early, and just love the quiet, you know, and it's something I can do for my wife, because the kids get up and slowly like things kind of come alive in our house. But so that's you know, I take my time to think and kind of be quiet then, which is another important thing.
finding time to pray. And when I don't do it, I really feel it. And it's not an everyday thing, so it's not like meditating where I start my day doing it, it's just a ritual. But it's one of those things that if I don't do it at a certain point during the week, I kind of miss it. And it doesn't have to be a long time. Sometimes it's just a moment. You know, it'll be like 5 seconds. But it just keeps me connected and grounded in my brain and kind of brings me back to a lot of things that are really important to me. So it's almost like, you ever see that machine in the magazines for $14,000, you can exercise for 10 minutes a day. It's this funky looking machine. Anyways, I see it advertised all the time, but I could never figure out, like, A, why you'd spend that much, and B, have 10 minutes of exercise like the PX90 if it really works. So, you know, for me, it's just finding that 5 seconds to connect, do it, and then, you know, get it through until I do it again. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'll ask you, so what kind of prayer is it, you know, what are you usually praying about? That's your personal question.
I don't really pray for anything, so it's not kind of like, I remember back like 20 years ago, it was a big thing, like if you chant for something, you get it. It was like, you know, people were chanting and thinking they were going to get a new car or a new job. So I'm not really like praying for anything in particular. I think it's just the act of doing it. It's the act of just like taking pause and connecting with some power higher than myself. That's the connection for me. So, you know, it's not, hey, get me this thing or I want this thing. It's spirituality is really important to me. So having that connection, it's just kind of like, you know, keeping your car serviced. You know, sometimes you forget to do it. When you do it, your car runs better. That's what it is for me. Yeah.
I find that what works for me on a daily basis is, as sort of a former kind of crazy, impetuous person, I found that kind of laying on a really set, regular structure works for me. So I become a complete creature of habit in the first half of my day. So I get up almost every morning at 4 in the morning, even on the weekends, because that allows me to do everything that I want to do. And so I get up at 4 in the morning, and I have black Lipton tea with soy milk and honey. And I do my meditation and prayer. I'm done by about 5. And it's exactly the time I'm supposed to wake my wife up and bring her coffee, which I do. Then if it's one or two mornings a week, I have a gym in my house, I lift weights. And if not, I just hit the shower, and I'm at work at 6:30. And I have a very structured day at work from 6:30 till about 1 to 2. And then after that, it's whatever I want to do, whatever needs to be done, whether I have appointments with clients or prospective clients, or I do 2 days a week or so, I do life coaching at a rehab center where the guys are transitioning from rehab to sober living. I help them find jobs. So I use my client network to intervene on their behalf and say, listen, I know a guy, he's got this deal, here's his resume, can you help him? He's really committed to staying clean and sober, he needs a break. And, you know, I lean on some of the people that I know to help him get back into motion. Sometimes I'll meet up with one of my kids. About 2 or 3 afternoons a week. There's a 4:30 Bikram yoga class I do. But, you know, so the afternoons are pretty open, really structured in the first half of the day. Both my wife and I usually have dinner engagements or appointments, and we end up meeting. We try one of us 2 or 3 weeknights to one of us to get home so that our 13-year-old isn't totally alone all the time. So one of us will get home, and then sometimes I'll read with him, or my wife has some stuff that she does with him. But a lot of times my wife and I will get home at 8:30 or 9, have about 10 minutes together, and then we fall asleep and it starts all over again. And it's just like a really set routine. It's really structured. I need that structure.
Can I ask a question? It sounds like you went from a transition from you said a frenetic person to you've got this kind of routine that seems to be really working for you. Was there an event that triggered this transition?
Totally. Yeah, I had a business that I had that was very successful blow up, and I lost everything. I went from what I had considered to be a very successful life, with all the great cars, the beautiful home in the Hollywood Hills, to driving a used Chevy Astra van, paying rent down in the flats, and having my wife completely hate me and having completely what I thought was a dysfunctional life. It was about 18 years ago, and it was a catalyst for getting real. And I did a career change, and I changed the way I approached my wife and the way I communicated with my kids. And I said, I'm fixing this. It was brutal. I went from totally successful to broke in about a month.
You also went from, Berkeley, early 70s, kind of hippie lifestyle to,
You would say it was hippie. I don't think it was hippie. I thought it was
well,
awesome.
I'm not going to claim it was a good way of describing it. But, to work in an institution. So what's your, this is just a question just for you, but money, quality of life, not a lot of people like to talk about how that relates, because everyone just, it makes them, they skirt the issue. But you're in that business. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, it's really simple. About 14 years ago, when I was still in the middle of this disaster and looking to transition, I got a spiritual teacher, and he basically told me that the only reason to make more money is if you give more money away, and that just resonated really, really deeply. So I just made it my point in life to make as much money as I can, so I can give as much money away as I can, so that I actually have an effect on the earth.
By the way, I think we're about 8:15 right now. If people need to go, don't feel bad. If it's okay with you guys, we'll maybe go for another 20 minutes or so. If that's okay with you guys. So we'll keep going, but if you do have to go, don't feel bad. So I'll ask one more question and then open it up to the audience. But one thing I've observed with people that I've interviewed, or those people that you sort of respect out there, is that they get what they want, and it's not a bad thing in life to get what you want. It's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean you're subjugating someone else. And I've seen people that can do that in a way that lends dignity to others and all that. So my question is, if I was to, I'll start with Dan, but if I was to shadow you for a couple of days while you were maybe around the house dealing with a contractor, or on vacation dealing with the guy who was taking you out on a boat or whatever, what are the things I might observe watching you when you're trying to get that nicer hotel room? I know you want to get the nicer room, and nothing wrong with that, right? But I mean, what do you think I might observe, the way that you treat people?
Well, look, I think I feel like the right thing to do is treat everybody the same. Whether it's the CEO of a big company, or it's the person cleaning your office, or it's someone you bump into on the street. That's not a hard question, I don't think. At the end of the day, that's just about kindness and, appreciation of humans. To me, that's a given. I don't know.
So you find that, no, that's kind of it. So what makes people want to do right by you is the kindness, humility thing.
I think that's like a required ingredient. I've got, like, for example, I just had dinner, a seafood company that we invested in. It was we made the investment 7 years ago. I partnered with this guy who is high school grad, I think he graduated high school, Sicilian, son of a fisherman. Amazing guy, amazing businessman, highly intelligent, but, really took a lot of work, and we overcame battle after battle, hurdle after hurdle. And so I'm having dinner with he and his wife and my fiance, and he goes, I could have screwed you 100 times. And by the way, I know that, but I was like, he goes, but I never would, because you had my back always. So, to me, it's the kindness is just the way to, that's just an everyday, all the time thing. For there, it was doing what I said I was going to do, living up, contrary to your story. I mean, in my personal life, in my business culture, with my son, It's one of our mantras. You do what you say. Do what you say you're going to do. And so to me, that's being kind. That's just a way to treat people. It's appropriate. But then building those relationships that withstand adversity, which is when you really test something. It's not when things are good, when things aren't good. That comes from not always doing the easy thing. It's doing the hard thing, and it's sticking to your word even if it's going to cost you, or sticking to your word even if it's going to be hard, and confronting those fears of what might lay ahead on that path. But doing it, locking arms with someone, it's that stuff to me is like, if you shadowed me for 2 days, I hope that you come away, first of all, wet for being in the water with me, but also with the notion that, man, Lubeck does what he says he's going to do.
Thanks. What would you say now?
Well, I think you'd observe, one thing you observe is you probably notice I ask a lot of questions of people. I think I'm genuinely a curious person, and I'm really interested in what people's stories are. Like when I interview people now, I've stopped asking them about what their skill sets. I'm just like, tell me your story. And I'm like, they're like, okay, well, I just used to work. I'm like, no, like, start at the very beginning. I want to hear your story, and I want to understand, like, the decisions you've made and the experiences that have shaped you.
Great person in his personal life. It doesn't really work for me. I mean, who you are when you go to work has to be the same person as who you are when you're out surfing or trying to get a better hotel room, or all of that. And I think the juxtaposition between, those two things is where the world kind of breaks down. I mean, if you are who you are every day of your life, then it doesn't change any. If you're doing a deal or managing someone's money or all of that, you're probably bringing everything that's part of your kind of whole thing into those meetings at the end of the day, or into your work with your clients, and people are trying to get sober. It's like, that's who you are now. So I've never understood, kind of, well, I'm a great guy at home, but I'm just a real ass at the office. Kind of like, no, you're probably an ass at home, and no one's telling you. So anyway, that's, you kind of see me with a bad time measure.
I like that. That was good. It would depend on if it was a weekend or the weekdays, but I guess, if you were looking after me for a couple of days, you would probably see somebody that deals with, on the weekdays, a lot of intense decision making, because I'm dealing with people's monies. And there's nothing that makes people crazier than that simple, than their money. So I'm kind of psychotherapist, investor. I don't know. I mean, it's very intense, every minute to minute, and you would probably wonder, well, there's a lot of intensity there, and you'd probably say, well, he seems to deal with it pretty well. Not always, but most of the time. And as far as the hotel room goes, I never have to get angry because my wife tells me. I'm happy with any room I get.
All done. Questions from the audience?
Yeah, I picked up a book in here, as a matter of fact, in this library. It's just one of those little motivational books. It was called The Art of Underachieving, and it was written by a doctor, and he explained all the ways to underachieve and therefore having a better life. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great notion. It's really, I guess it depends. It's really how you define achievement, right? So most people, when you say that, they're saying, well, you're not, economically successful. But the reality is to have a balanced life, you have to sacrifice something, right? If if your only aspiration is great economic wealth, it's going to take a toll, either on your family or your hobbies or the other things that you want to spend time with. You know, or unless you're very fortunate and you trade something that doesn't take a lot of time, and, you know, it just spits out cash, which doesn't happen very often. You know, something's got to give. And so I think what he said, I haven't read the book, but I love the title because I wrestle with that concept all the time. I've lectured this business school classes, and, you know, I usually say, okay, you know, if you ever did a maze when you were a kid, right, you figured out that it was easier to do mazes if you start at the end and work backwards, right? So my point to these classes is, if you're now at this point in your life where you're trying to figure out where you want to go, well, the clearer vision you can have where you want to go, then the straighter the path will be to get there, okay? But I talk about balance a lot, and so about pursuing your passions, about being a good father or mother, and those things take time. And I like, look, if there's someone out there that's going to invent the cure for cancer, and you're going to have to sacrifice surfing or being home with your kids, but you're going to cure cancer, I don't want to talk you out of it. Okay? So it's that conflict between, do you use time for X, which may be economic achievement, which most people kind of associate with, you know, achievement, or do you want to use time for all the other letters of the alphabet, which really, if you ask, I guess the point of this panel, the point of this philanthropy is redefine achievement, and then you may not be underachieving, you may be knocking it out of the park.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this might seem like a dumb question. Basically, I'm an activist most of the time, very happy about that. But my wife and friends, they always seem to have a positive attitude. They say you have to think good thoughts. And that matters. And, you know, I don't mean this as a silly thing, but I'm from Philadelphia. I root for the Philadelphia Phillies in a ball game, and I get there. And sometimes I think if I think it negative things, you know, they start to lose. And I'm thinking, can I really make a difference like that? And I just don't believe it, you know, that really makes a difference, whether you're thinking positively or thinking negatively. But how do you feel about things like that? Can you really make a difference in the way you think, even with your thoughts, and why, and how that works for you?
Well, it's tough being a Philly fan. I'm there. Yeah, you know, the way I at least, you know, my take on it, the way I look at it is, you know how when you vote, you go there and there's like millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of people voting, and you're like one vote, and it's, you know, are you changing the election? Well, a couple cases, yeah, that's happened, but in 99.9% of the elections, your vote actually isn't changing the outcome of things. But you're voting, and you get your sticker, and you put it on, and you've participated, you've been part of something, and you know, I know that for me, the process of voting is pretty transformational. I feel great when I vote. I feel like I'm participating in the world's greatest democracy, this miracle, just even from a technology standpoint, that they're counting all these votes on the same day. And my vote doesn't change the outcome of things, just like me rooting for the Phillies doesn't change the outcome of things, but it changes my experience around it. And who knows, sometimes one vote doesn't make a difference. So I don't know, that's the way I kind of look at that. Because yeah, it's easy to say, think positive, think negative. Does it change the outcome? Well, it can change your personal reality, I think.
I mean, people have talked and done studies about, you know, people with terminal disease and how thinking positive, you know, shifts the disease. So I think it can change your experience. You thinking bad thoughts is not going to help the Phillies or whoever they're playing lose, I don't know. I mean, if you have a whole stadium, you know, chanting and suddenly, you know, going, man, is that going to, you know, help a pitcher throw a bad pitch? Maybe. You know, but I think it has more to do with yourself. What you can control in your life and your business, your relationship with your son, and, you know, what you do every day is, what you control is yourself. I mean, that's really it. That's all you got.
I don't think that it changes the outcome of the Phillies game, but I do believe that if you do something really positive, other people see it, it affects other people.
Yeah, thank you for that, Matt. How did you go from that house in Hollywood Hills or blah, 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 to that wretched state that you were in? Were you addicted to drugs? Did you mismanage money, or what happened?
I'm actually the only person who's not an alcoholic who sometimes goes to AA meetings. So no, I wasn't a drug. I don't have a drug problem. I don't have an alcohol problem. What happened was, it's a long story, but to cut it down to a couple of sentences, I had a real big business with a partner, and I had some personal guarantees financially with my father-in-law on something that he did in real estate, and he went down in the 1989, 1999 real estate disaster, and I had those personal guarantees. So our business was so good, and I was the driving force behind the business, so I went to my business partner, I said, listen, I need to park my stock with you for a couple of years because I may have to declare a personal bankruptcy, and you know, I'm just going to give it to you. And I totally trusted her because I was the business, and she had me fired about 30 days later, and it was like it was my business. I brought her into it. I was the complete driving force, and I was devastated. And like you said, you know, you look back on it a few years later, it was the single best thing that ever happened in my life. It was awesome. But that's what happened. I lost my business.
Oh,
Yes, sir, in the back. All right.
Hi, thank you guys for being here. It's been fantastic to hear you guys. One question I had is, in your respective occupations, do you feel that you had a love for it that you went after because you truly loved it, or was it something that you kind of fell into and you grew to love it because you're like, it's, you know, this is just what I'm doing and I love it.
Is your work your passion too, or is it you're just good at it?
Great question.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about my work. You know, I kind of came to what I do by just thinking about. I kind of believe, like, think about a little bit like what I'm good at and what I'm passionate about. I think oftentimes those things have a relationship to one another. Not always, but I kind of look for things that check both those boxes. And you know, it's like I'm really curious. I love creativity. I love lateral thought, and there are some businesses that, and I like building relationships with people. There are some businesses that take those four skill sets. It's like, okay, that's moderately relevant to us. And there are other areas where they're like, wow, that's exactly what we need. You don't have to be good at anything else. If you're good at those couple things, then that's what we really value. So I kind of got into a field of values, the things I care about. So there are probably other fields I could be equally passionate about that value those things. But you know, what I learned about myself is that if I'm not involved with ideas, that I'm not being who I can be, you know. And so that's where our company is. It's dedicated to creativity, and that works for me. So that is one of the reasons I'm passionate about it.
In my case, I didn't. I had no desire to do what I do for a living. I completely resisted it, and when I eventually was almost forced to do it, I really didn't like it for a while. And slowly but surely, I completely got into it to a point where I'm in a zone every day. I'm so into it, and it's like every one of our careers is like a different cocktail of different qualities. And the cocktail of what I do in managing money is I deal with people. I am a therapist. I create solutions for them. It's incredible. And there's this light overlay of gambling. So it's like, there's an adrenaline rush factor to it that I am absolutely hooked on.
How do you deal with your dark days? One of you said, I think this gentleman on the hand, you said you like balancing your life. And I think all of us have gone through the dark days of business, dark days in our personal lives. So how do you deal with your dark moments? And how do you motivate yourself out of those moments?
It's a great question. First of all, I will say that there's a darkness that I've never experienced, but I had someone very close to me go through a really bad depression. And I'll tell you, that's a hard thing for everybody, the person going through it, and everybody around them. So that's a darkness I can't opine to, because it's just beyond, and I hope I never experience. I think anyone could fall in those circumstances, but wow. If there's anyone, and the reason I say that is because if you ever are around someone that's going through it, you have to learn that empathy skill, because you're just thinking, hey man, suck it up, pick yourself up, you can do better. And that's true in reality, but boy, that's a far place from where they are. So to the realm of the darkness that I go through, that we go through, that the struggles, I'll go back to something I said earlier, which is number one is accepting. When things are shitty, when I made a bad decision, when I'm getting beat up, the first thing I do is try and accept it. Okay, because if I don't accept it,
it hurts more.
Yeah, right. Really, it's funny, but it's pretty simple. It sounds as simple as it is. It's if I accept it, I accept. When I find when I accept it that I get a lot of enlightenment as to why it's happening, and then it helps me figure out how to deal with it.
I think in the darkest time, the same thing comes in the good time, which is you can always give back. And so whether you're at the top of the game or at the bottom of the game, by giving back, there's always someone who's having a tougher time than you, even if it's hard to believe. And I can remember going through some of my darkest times. I went to work in a food bank. There was someone doing worse than I was. And these people would walk in the door, and if you've ever seen the look on someone's face who's really, really hungry and who really needs something, when you hand them a bag of food, they kind of light up. And that experience of giving, even when you're on the bottom, lifts you up. So I think it's always, whether you're at the top of the game or the bottom of the game, that giving back that we're all talking about, I think really elevates your soul and gets you through the dark times.
I'd add one thing too is, let me tell you, it's probably true for everyone in this room, but your most profound lessons, the most important things you learn, typically are from when you've hurt the most. And so if you remember that, you recognize that even though it feels horrible at the time, that in there is an opportunity, and that when I've always believed that what separates, people that have real great, positive, successful lives and people that don't are how they deal with adversity. To me, I've always believed that's the separator. Really, at the end of the day, that's the separator. So you hear your story, that's an amazing story. I'm so grateful you shared it. I've learned so much from it. But, here's the thing where, and even worse, I think, it wasn't taken from you, you kind of gave it to them. So you're beating up yourself, you're fighting with your wife, but yet, obviously, at a certain point, you had some kind of acceptance, epiphany, and it puts you on a path that is so much better and higher. If that story doesn't, it's inspired me. So if that doesn't inspire you as to what you can do with adversity, that will get you through it.
Great. Thanks. Yes, ma'am.
I have a cliche I've always said about this subject we just finished, is that in the darkness, only in darkness can seeds grow with a little bit of sunshine, and only in light with the sun can bloom. And just take that and wind it around to what they're saying, and it's really a fact of life. It's being human on earth.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's like doubt, like whether you're doing the right thing with your life. One day you're going to die soon. And, you know, should you be off in a mountain reading books, figuring out the riddles of life? But you know, you got kind of, I guess, sometimes it's a chore to return back to kind of the.
Your job can't be your life. Because if your job is so boring that you're bored, then you got to find something else in your life that makes your life full. Because your job is just a part of your life, and anyone who just has their job in their life kind of ends up, I don't know, kind of like a George Orwell, kind of like an empty existence. So if you're in that kind of day in and day out, you know, get a hobby, join a group, do a charity, read a book, do something that kind of pulls you out of it, because life's too short. I mean, there isn't like a second life. Well, there may be, but no one's really figured it out. It's like you're here, you live, and then you're dead. So you might as well, in that time, find the most different ways to fulfill it. If it's not your job, find something else. Build a relationship, do a charity, do something that's going to bring you up. Because otherwise, that's it. You know, there's no second act.
I think a lot also is, you know, the self-awareness to kind of know what you're looking for, and because there's a different path for everybody, right? So some people's path might be having a life where every day there's sort of those passion-related things are infused into it, or balance is infused to it. Another person's path might be like, all right, I'm going to start a company, and I realize that, you know, the best path for me is 5 years, you know, subjugating some of my quality life things because I want to get to a certain point, and then at that point have more opportunities. So, I mean, from people that I've met and talked to, and just whether it's having, you know, beer and conversation with people, I've noticed that, you know, it's a different path, and the best way to know what a person's path is probably, you know, taking, whether it's alone time or reflection time or whatever, to figure out what kind of game works for you.
I also think that's a really normal emotion. I think that's part of the human condition, to have moments where, it's funny, my wife's mother just had a stroke recently, and so we're kind of figuring out what life looks like, taking care of a parent, taking care of little kids, and she kind of had this, she's talking, she's like, yeah, I just keep asking myself, she's like, this is it? Like, this is my life? This is it? And you know, when she said that, we just kind of laughed, because it's like, I think that that's what human beings experience, no matter what they're doing.
Through Woody Allen.
Yeah, well, I just think that type of, like, you know, like that's something that I think human beings are inclined to experience, and like there are lots of ways to power through it and lots of things that you can do, but I always find solace in knowing that what I'm experiencing is something that probably a lot of other people are going through right now or have gone through, and I don't know, to me there's some comfort in that.
I think also that if you really genuinely, from the bottom of your heart, ask the question, you'll get the answer. So if you really meditate on your perception of being stuck in whatever you might be stuck in, and you ask for an answer as to how to get unstuck, and you really meditate on it, and you really ask, and you really get clear enough, I think you might get the answer.
What role has patience played in getting you guys to where you are now in your lives?
You can start with.
Okay, yeah. That's my fault. I know her. Yeah. That's yours. Oh man, I think patience is such a fundamental virtue. I think that you know, impatience can really, I find it really clutters my mind. It kind of clouds my decision making, and it also challenges my relationships with other people in a big way. You know, if you are impatient, you will be impatient with others, and there's a certain negativity that goes along with that. you know, when I was talking about like keep learning, like sometimes the things, for me, if things aren't going the way I want them to, or I want things to be different, and I want them to be different right now, that kind of learning practice is how I kind of feel like I'm still moving in a way that's for me, and doesn't necessarily, you know, can't affect your outcome sometimes, but you can do that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's I think patience is a very challenging thing for me, and probably for a lot of people, but I think ability to get to a patient is such a key.
I think there's a flip side to that, and I would say that there's a time and a place for everything, including patience. But there's absolutely a time and a place where you don't want any patience. My wife actually taught me the value of being completely impatient. My wife is very impatient, and so I've learned that to be impatient about BS, impatient about things that are trivial, is absolutely appropriate. So there's a time and a place to absolutely be impatient, and you'll find that when you exercise your impatience properly, there's very little BS in your life. And I think it's really important. And so I'm totally impatient.
Yeah, that's funny. I was going to say impatience is probably more valuable than patience in a way. I think delayed gratification, which is just a kind of patience, is very important, particularly if you're going to strike any kind of entrepreneurial path, right? You got to be willing to sacrifice now for greater stuff in the future. Right? And that's a kind of patience. So I think that's really critical. I absolutely have done it many times, and I'm sure that's true for everybody here. But patience, I sit there thinking about your questions, like patience, what does that really mean? It means that you're willing to wait beyond what you feel is an appropriate time for some result. You know, I've never really thought about it that much. I'm going to think about it for sure later, but in business or in daily life, I mean, I guess everyone can have a different opinion as to what's an appropriate time period. And so maybe if you're being patient, you're having to adjust to someone else's, what they think is an appropriate time period. I don't know. It's a really good question. It's a very complex question. So thank you for bringing it up. I don't know how it plays in. But I know impatience is really important.
And I wouldn't want to confuse patience with stagnation. In other words, you know, I think if you know where you want to get to and you want to be patient for it, that's one thing. But if you're telling yourself, okay, I'm just going to be patient and wait, but you're also not going in the direction you want to go in, then you're not really being fair to yourself.
That's delayed gratification, right? Patience is a really interesting concept. When is patience the right thing?
Well, I think patience with yourself.
Forgiveness or patience?
Well, I don't think that, because a lot of as we're talking about patience, we're talking about emotion, and sometimes not moving is the same as, you know what I mean? It's all, I just think it's all about how you feel about where you are. A little less outcome oriented, maybe.
Well, yeah, your patience. You know, what you're talking about, it's also kind of reactiveness. You know, kind of a different strain on it. But I love this whole concept of the kind of the dichotomy play, right? So like being patient, but also being impatient. And I've told this story over and over, but I love the one of forget the business leader who pointed it out, but he's talking about the sense of entitlement. And he was talking about how the dichotomy at play there, obviously there's a negative connotation to, you know, sense of entitlement, like, oh, you know, someone can be soft and I'm entitled and I deserve this without earning it. But then the flip side of that is the whole, like, why not me thing, right? You know, why shouldn't my firm be able to, you know, compete against Apollo or these different firms? And then the positive side is like, you know, why shouldn't my company be entitled to the same success as some other company? I love hearing the flip side of these different things. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Last question.
The process of making decisions, either in life or, in business or personal, sometimes you have different choices and you have to make decisions. So, how do you go about making the right decision I mean, sometimes it's, there is so much gray area and choosing anything, I mean, because I find a lot of difficulties in doing that. So I was wondering, I'm sure you have many choices sometimes.
Well, Bob said it. I mean, the wrong decision can turn out to be the right decision.
Right.
So in other words, it's about taking the situation you're in and making the best of it. And when you make a decision and it's wrong, you've got to live with it, but then you've got to turn it right. And the people who get stuck make a decision that's wrong, and they just sit there and they spend lives going, okay, I made a decision that's wrong, woe is me, versus, Bob, who made a decision clearly for a number of reasons it was wrong, but then was able to reshape it into a life that for him is a much better life, and he can sit here and say, gee, I've never been happier. So, I think that as long as you're doing something, it's not a bad decision.
Especially with business people that make a decision really quickly. And, I mean, I don't know how they do it.
I think you gotta get right and wrong out of the vocabulary a little bit in terms of that. I think it's, when you have a lot of pressure, that doesn't necessarily make you better. And sometimes it makes you not as clear. So I think one thing I struggle with, but I really try to do, is look at them as decisions. Like they're not right or wrong. They're just different paths, and you choose one, and then you're on your journey, and you're just you do the best you can with that, and who knows, just be, I think trying to make the right decision is such a natural instinct, but I find it just screws me up every time when I start getting in that mindset.
I've got two things. One, I just had an epiphany about patience. I'll share it before we end this. I realized the time when it's right to be patient is when things are out of your control. So when you're hoping for a result where you can't control it all, that's when you have to be patient. All right. So just a little patience.
It's just kind of always.
Well,
that's right.
Let's say you're shopping for a new house, right? And you've got a vision. It's better to be patient until that is realized than rush into one that you might regret. So, just a little patience epiphany now. That's a great question. I feel better. I knew there was something. But, there's different kinds of decision makers. It's different. Like there's different people make decisions differently. Like some people need a lot of data, and they really like to think about it. They really like to sleep on it. They really like to grind on it, and then they make their decision. One of my most successful leaders that I ever partnered with made decisions like that, and it really used to drive me crazy a little bit because I am the opposite. And part of the reasons that I gravitate to what I do and love what I do is I like making decisions with very little data. I like using my gut and my kind of understanding of nature and the laws of nature and the forces in play here, and more of those kind of factors than really granular data. So that's what I like to make. I'll come to conclusions pretty quickly, and I know I'm not always going to be right, but I'm pretty comfortable I'll be right a lot more than I'm wrong. And I don't mind, like being wrong to me isn't devastating. So, the people that are very methodical, I think they mind being wrong more than I mind.
Sort of fear of making the wrong decision.
So you might have a real fear of making a wrong decision. So I think this is probably way out of our pay grade, but if you wanted to be able to make quicker decisions, then you have to eliminate some of the fear associated with maybe making a wrong one.
Good stuff. Thanks everyone for coming tonight.